Hey everybody, thanks for joining us for another special episode of Birds on a Blue Note. If you couldn't already tell by our outfits, we are pumped and ready for the draft happening tomorrow. And hopefully we can get this video out before the morning, but it may come out draft day morning. Anyways, we are going to be coming to you with our predictions of all of the Blues picks in this upcoming draft. Now, for those of you curious as to which picks exactly we're going to be looking at, well, don't worry, we got a quick graphic for you thanks to the Blues. So we have 9 total picks as of right now, barring any trades and results from that. So we have ourselves down in the first round with just that 16th pick. Round 2, we got 48 and 56. Third round, we got 81 and 95. Fourth, we got 113, 145 in the fifth, and rounded down in the seventh with 2 picks at 209 and 211. So a good amount to work with. And I am joined by my fellow podcasters here. We got RJ and Zach. Thanks for joining me, guys.
Of course. Excited for the
Sir,
draft.
excited
Yep.
for him.
Should be a fun one. And so, yeah, let's go ahead and hop into this real quickly. Just a side note, apologies to some of the players as we may botch some of your names. It is a little bit more difficult in the later rounds to get some more accurate name counts on these things. So hopefully we will do our best. And if not, we will be able to fix it going forward once we hear you announced officially at the draft.
I don't think I'm gonna mess a single one up. My most Midwestern voice ever.
Oh yeah. All right. So hopping into that first round, surprise, surprise, we actually are expecting this to be a trade. Now, we're modeling this trade off of the Dallas-Detroit trade in 2021. So in this trade, Calgary would end up receiving first rounder, ours, obviously, in exchange for as well as our fourth round pick, that 113. In return, we'd end up getting Vancouver's first round at number 28, as well as the 41st pick. And then we also would get another second rounder from Calgary as well. But as far as why, as you can imagine, that's important. I mean, for Calgary, they're one of the biggest movers in the draft this year, most likely because they've got 8 picks in the first 4 rounds. So 2 in every round. And I mean, they already have an above average prospect pool. So they're going to be looking for quality over quantity here. And they also face the real possibility of losing their first round pick next year to Montreal in 2022 with that Sean Monahan trade if it's not in the top 10, which honestly might be the best deal for Montreal, netting 2 first rounder for future considerations and 1 Calgary player this year from the Jets. So, I mean, anyways, for that reason, might be tempting for Calgary to move up, especially looking at that prospect pool. They need most right wingers. So, most of the wingers aren't going to fall out of the top 10, meaning or sorry, they should fall out of the top 10. So they'll have plenty of options here, like Brent Nygaard, Seneca, and Greentree as well. But obviously they don't need all of those picks. And that's why, at least for the Blues, we might be a good pick. Because for us, we're probably going to be shooting for defensemen, and at least all the top defensemen are going to be gone, most likely by the time that it comes to us. So it makes more sense, especially with Army style, for him to try and trade back at the end of the day. Especially when we can, end up getting an earlier pick back later. We could end up trading up, but really doesn't make as much sense for us where we're at and everything. But yeah, I mean, as stated, this trade was modeled off of that 2021 Dallas-Detroit trade. So Detroit getting that 15th pick and Dallas receiving 23, 48, and 138. So, I mean, the Blues' goal is to draft and improve that defensive core. And besides Lindy, I mean, the defense is, you know, pretty meh overall
Yeah,
with like
very
Burns.
sus.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of high potential defensemen in the late first and early second rounds, and we could go for a safe option with like Jurasek, but I mean, we personally like the odds of taking one of those three high chance, you know, people who could turn into something better. But one last thing before I pass it on to RJ and Zach for our first couple picks. Is just that a lot of fans are clamoring for us to trade up, and because of Chicago, I, they've kind of screwed the pooch for everybody. It cost them a lot just to move up a couple picks and whatnot, so everybody else is going to be asking a pretty high price, and I just don't see Army and Steiner pulling the trigger on something like that. But yeah, so kicking it off to that first round pick.
Yeah, sure. So with our first pick, 28th overall, as you mentioned, defenseman, I have us taking Leo Salin Wallenius. Definitely not Wall-Anus, so I'm just making sure the pronunciation. He's 18. He's a Swede. Central Scouting has him ranked as the seventh ranked European player. In the Junior 20 Nationals, he played 43 games, 11 goals, 31 assists, plus 20. World Junior, 7 games, 3 goals, plus 2. So we're going for the Swedish with first round again. Taking Leo Celine Wallenius. He's been the cusp all season, being like teetering between first and second round with his questionable checking ability. So some mocks haven't fallen out of the first round completely, but since we're at the very back end of the first, we're going to take like the high upside side pick, as you mentioned. So kind of a low floor, high upside type pick. But really the checking is like the biggest knock for him. He's two-way player who in the World Juniors, he was a first liner at even strength and on the power play. And he was second line on the penalty kill, which is big for us because obviously we have an issue with that currently. Also not really a one-trick pony. Offensive zone, he has both shooting and passing ability. He's got fantastic hockey IQ with holding the puck in the blue line and knowing the importance of shooting the puck for rebound attempts. So although he's not like the biggest guy in the world, he's 6 feet. Yep, exactly 6 feet. He does control the puck pretty well. The only player Celine seems to have trouble with are speedsters, demonstrated by what we saw in the U.S. speedsters did to him in the first game of the World Juniors. But there's a lot to like with him. So like he would definitely slot in as like a second line defensive player pretty immediately for us as long as he gets better with his checking.
Yeah,
He's a very similar player, I think, right now to Nick Leddy. It's a good example of like who to compare him to.
yeah, good call there.
I'll kick out
Uh, we,
second round to Zach. So go ahead, Zach.
yeah, that second round pick, we have a little bit higher second round pick. It's Aaron Kiwiharu. Central Scouting has him as the eighth guy. He's undersized. It's the first thing to kind of pick on him for. He's only 5'9", 170. But he's a power play defenseman. He has got great vision. Kind of a quarterback out there, if you will. He's had a chance to go top 10 before the year started, but he got hurt for most of the year. So there's not really a whole lot of statistics to go off of based on last year. But he's kind of a project. He's going to probably be 3 years out before we really get a chance to see him impact. And really, with where we're at, I got you, RJ. With where we're at, it might perfectly fit right in for us. The biggest thing is just kind of hoping he doesn't get picked before us, just for a team who wants that high upside guy late first round, early second round. But I like him a lot. He's the perfect kind of guy to get the power play started and really push the puck up the ice.
Going to be curious to see if he drops that far because again, he was at one point, set to go in that top 10, top 15.
But
So if we can steal him with this pick here, that would be huge in my opinion.
Yeah, taking two like high potential defensemen with our first two picks makes a lot of sense too. I think, like you said, the biggest knocks on him right now are the injury, and then he is a little undersized, being only 5'9" for a defenseman.
he's
But
18. I grew 5 inches after I was 18 almost. So you never know. So
Yeah, no, that's totally true. So moving on to that 48th pick, just a few spots after this. Have us picking Alphonse Frage, another Swedish D-man, 6 foot, 13th ranked Euro skier. And just a few little stats for him. On the J20 National, he had 40 games played, 14 goals, 19 assists. So, kid definitely knows how to get points. And again, this is another sweet pick for us, you know. One of our favorite moments in last year's draft was when Otto was doing his post-selection interview, and then he suddenly got super excited learning that Lindy had been drafted as well. So, you know, call it sentimental, but it would be kind of nice to kind of recreate that here again. And yeah, I mean, Frage has a lot of comparisons to Son as well, especially when it comes to his skating ability. And he has the same potential, but might even be a bit faster. The two knocks on his game are really big knocks. The lesser of the two is that he can be a bit like egotistical and overconfident in himself late in the game and take unnecessary slap shots. And uh, these are the types of shots that, you know, can end up missing and come back hot and lead into those odd man breaks. You know, especially evident on the power play when that happens. But that's, you know, why he's not really on that first line. But the knock too is he struggles a lot in reading a play, and he can look lost at times, which leads to turnovers, especially during transition. That can be fixed, but it will take a lot of time working with coaches and trainers and whatnot. But if the Blues fix this, I mean, he could easily be a top quality defenseman, and that could be three of them all of a sudden in our prospect pool within one single draft, which would heavily reload that position.
Yeah, that'd be huge. And like you said, the two knocks on him aren't really like a physical ability or like his game. It's mental thing. So those can be fixed with like I believe proper coaching and just better leadership around him. But
in
yeah,
almost all sports, I always say draft athletes. I mean, you could teach an athlete all the in between stuff, but always draft the guys who, if you're a freak out there, take that dude.
Yeah.
but yeah. With our fourth pick, I guess. Also in the second round, pick number 56, we're actually going to be taking a center. I believe it. I'm going to butcher this name. So, uh, Heikki Ronan, something like that. He's Finnish. 17-year-old, 6'1", 204 pounds. Central Scouting has him ranked as the 35th European skater right now. He's playing in La Liga right now for Team Blue. In the under 20 league, he played 37 games, 20 goals, 27 assists. World Juniors, he played 5 games, 3 goals, 2 assists, was +4. So this is our first non-defenseman, right? So this really is like our biggest reach so far. But it has a lot to like for possibly being the first forward drafted by the Blues. He can be described as your traditional power forward, being bigger for the center. He has a heavy shot. He's great in the corners. He's got a great forecheck. He's very physical. He also has some of the non-traditional traits like elite face-off skills and powerful strides. There are some knocks though, usually cause him to fall into like the third round or possibly later. But I mean, yeah, he doesn't really provide much on the offensive end of the ice and make some questionable passing decisions. But he also plays in a not very talented league in the Finnish juniors, so that kind of leads to him not putting up those numbers. He is going to be playing at Harvard next year, so hopefully the smart school can make his playing style a little bit more smart, as smart people tend to do. But it's not really the fanciest pick by any means. But if you take a look at the Blues physically, we're lacking quite a lot. Most of our smaller skaters like being like the Kyries and the Thomases that like really shoot or pass first and are not going to be heavy on the check. So bringing a guy like him, I think, and bringing a little bit of that toughness back, it's kind of like Ryan Reeves-esque a few years ago would be nice. Obviously, like no one's Reeves, but we definitely could use some of that like just to kind of scare the opponent a little bit, even if he's not going to score a lot, just to kind of give our team a little more oomph.
Yeah. I mean, and again, like he is pretty smart. Like he knows how to work this game, so you never know what he can develop into as well, so we'll go ahead and see. I mean, ultimately we have guys like Kairu and Tomer and that are going to be with the team that can score. We need guys that are going to be able to set them up as well, so if he can be one of those guys, the same way Neighbors is. Neighbors is getting into the net, letting those guys do their thing, and then he's tapping it in when they shoot it.
Absolutely.
So
And giving the shooters a little bit more space to work with too would be
yeah,
huge. So, or just
so
like crowd in the net, like you're looking for those juicy rebounds that we don't seem to do as much anymore as we did a few years back.
correct. Yeah.
No, absolutely. For us, what I'd take it in the third round again is Moose Matiko. And kind of speak about what you guys were talking about with the big body guys. He's 6'4", 210. He plays a lot like a power forward. The biggest things you kind of love about him is the fact that he's able to crowd the goalie. He actually showed a little bit on power play. I know he scored a goal against Germany on power play, which looked really good. But his stats were he played 49 games, 23 goals, 20 assists. I just love the size. I mean, 6'4", 210, and still at 18. That's shows a lot. He's done really, really well. The big thing against him, he's not really a great passer, and he makes a lot of kind of questionable decisions as far as the passing game goes. But he's able to screen the goalie. He has played a lot of power play, and he likes crashing the net for rebounds. So that's the exact things you guys were just talking about. And him being, once again, a big body, those are really big things that we could have going forward. So I'm really excited about him. Obviously, it's a lower pick, but two-way forwards are always good.
hmm And I mean, just a reminder to everybody, by the time that you're in this round and you're in the third, like all of these guys are gonna be, needing to be polished quite a bit. They're all gonna have their deficiencies, otherwise they would have been in the first,
Yeah, you
ultimately.
were looking for diamonds in the rough here, right? So
Pretty much.
yeah, high
And
upside, low floor.
I mean, that is one of the things where like our scouting department seems to do a little bit better on this more recently than they have in the past. So hopefully they can continue to work off of that. Any final thoughts on the Moose other than his awesome hockey name?
I was gonna
Yeah,
say sick nickname.
that's if your name's Moose in hockey, you're probably gonna be pretty good. That's all I'm saying.
So true. All right, perfect. So moving on to another third round pick that we got from the Rangers, 95th pick here. Uh, this is gonna be a fun one. Another Finnish
It's
name.
like
I'm gonna go with Juna Sarlenian.
the Eye
Um,
of Sauron at center.
this kid is a bit smaller, 5'9", 183. Central has him as the 49th skater in EuroLeagues. And I mean, the thing with, you know, this kid is like he actually does know how to score. So in the 4 games that he played in the under 18 Finnish playoffs, kid had 15 points. And no, you did not hear that wrong. 15 points in a 4 game stretch. 8 goals, 7 assists. Now, we're not all big fans of including the Five Nation tournament stats because it's a little bit less prestigious than the World Juniors. But I mean, in the tournament, the Finns had 12 total goals, and this kid had 6 of them. So, I mean, as you can imagine, he's a pretty good finisher. He can score from backhand, forehand, slot, on the dot. I mean, kid has really good vision and can even create plays off of the dot at times and face off. So, I mean, with all these highlights, his big, you know, knock is that he hasn't proven he can play against the NHL level talent, especially with his size. Because again, at 5'9", he, you know, is much smaller than most of the guys that we've been highlighting, even on the lower end. Most of these guys are like 5'11", 6 foot still. So just gonna have to put on strength, see how he can play. I mean, he can talk to our wonderful Aussie to get some tips on how to be a bit of a dog on the ice and whatnot. Because you never know, he could turn into one of those guys like Walker, but a better finisher ultimately, with his skill and whatnot. But like I said, well, he has looked good playing against other prospects. When he's come to playing against the actual like grown men in Liga, he was pretty awful. But again, it's the late third round and you never know what you'll get. And for a kid that's proven he can be an offensive player, I mean, if there's a risk to take here, I mean, this seems like it. True, like boom or bust.
I mean, that late in the draft, you have to take the high scoring ability, right? Like, because we talked about already, kind of looking for diamonds in the rough here, high ceiling, low floor type players, because they're all going to have their issues.
Yeah.
Especially with him being smaller, you might not think he's got the size or the physical ability for the NHL. But if he can score that much, like you mentioned, he had half of Finland's finish. He finishes for Finland quite a bit, had half their goals. So yeah, you got to take that potential, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's a good pick, especially late in the draft. So fifth round pick, I have pick number 145, William McIsaac. He's a right defenseman. Let me put on my other sunglasses here. So Central Scouting has him ranked as a 93rd ranked North American skater. Currently playing for the Spokane Chiefs in the WHL. 67 games, 6 goals, 21 assists. So this is our final defenseman I think we're mocking in this draft. So he has a lot of qualities we like. The first 3 defensemen that we took all play either side, but they all prefer the left, where McIsaac can fill in on the right if needed. And he's more focused on the defensive side. He is also focused on the defensive side of the action, not being used much in terms of overall offense, which is a need as well. He also has really good size at 6'3". Knows how to use it, especially when dealing with gap control. Overall, good hockey IQ and skating, even though he's a little slow starting up and lacks explosiveness. The biggest knock on his game, I think, is it gets a little reckless at times, trying to make the highlight reel play with incredibly flashy hits and trying to make awesome passes that just aren't there. His lack of offensive game will limit him to a third line defensive lineman in the NHL, but that's only if he shows improvement. Fortunately, he has one category in this plus minus. In 22-23, he had minus 15, while in the same number of games he had in the season as he had a positive 15. So if he's willing to learn, he's willing to like take the lumps and just get better. He can. So just the big question is if it's its ability to crack in the NHL. Just willing to listen to better advice, like stop making like the unnecessary passes but being on the right side, I think that's a need for us also. Like I said, this will be your 4th defenseman. Obviously we need a defenseman. So we got to like we keep saying, got to look for the high upside because it is there and he's a bigger body. He's going to help create space for our shooters too. So I don't know, later in the round, I like it. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind that pick at all. Like you said, all the other D-men that we've gone after so far in the draft have all been like mainly preferable on their left-hand side. So this just gives us something to kind of even that out ultimately. And it's a 5th round pick. So let's be realistic here.
Yeah. But he's a big guy too, right? So like he's got the size for the NHL. It's just his ability to improve and his ability to be coached properly and not make silly mistakes. So
Yeah,
um it's not really so much a skill issue other than the skating ability, I think. But just it's the mental things, that you learn as you grow and you age and you get better. So we'll
sure.
see.
Yeah. Absolutely. I have our next pick in the 7th round. It's Eric Paulson. He's one of the older guys in the draft. He's at 20. He's a Swede. He's 6 foot, 185. He's actually been playing the USHL last couple of years. He's been really good. He's been a team leader. He's a pass first player. In 57 games, he's got 27 goals, 44 assists. And he's actually a plus 23, so that's really good. He's been an impact guy though over there for him, despite being a little bit older. Uh, he actually compares a lot to, from what I've seen, is our third check, our third round pick. They were actually teammates, and their stats were actually very comparable. But they played together. Uh, there's like another one of our picks as well, Snuggerud. He's going to be playing at Minnesota. Uh, he's kind of average on a lot of his stuff, so that might keep him from getting drafted once again. But I think he's a high upside pick, and anytime you get to the end of the draft, you're either looking for high upside or team leaders, really just high character type guys, and that's exactly what he is. He spreads the puck around really, really well, and overall, I think he's a really good pick here, honestly, myself.
I mean, I don't disagree at all. Like, it's one of those things where, I mean, we seem to be picking really well out of these European leagues right now. So, I mean, who am I to question what they're seeing out of these guys, you know?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And there's been enough productivity there. It's definitely warranted. I mean, he's been out there and competed with really good talent, as well as played at a higher level than what he's a seventh round pick, really, for the most part. I think he's really the perfect type of sixth, seventh pick.
Well, not only that, I think going to Minnesota to play with Snuggerud next year will be big too, so they can kind of get that
Absolutely.
familiarity with each other. Because Snuggerud's one of these younger guys that we're really counting on to be like a core piece of the Blues for the future, for the long-term future. So, um, yeah, like I said, like being able to play with him and get some exposure, playing with someone who's going to be on his team later, possibly if this guy makes it, that's big though.
Yeah, I mean, especially after he's missed the last two times. So we'll see if we give him a shot this go around and whatnot. But leads us to our last pick in the draft, number 211 that we got from the Islanders. And we have us taking a goalie here, Landon Miller out of Canada, 6'4", 193, ranked as the number 6 North American goalie. And over in the OHL where he's playing, 30 games played, 2.79 goals against average with a 889 save percentage. So really the reason why we're choosing him here is because 9 out of 10 times it's a good idea to draft at least one goalie, you know, if not every year, every other year.
Right.
Just one of those positions that you always need, even if it's at like lower levels, just to fill in. And you never know what they can boom into. Just look at Binner and everything. So, I mean, we have a goalie spot open up in a few years. And we have like Zarenko, who's really highly favored in the team, as well as Ellis getting closer uh, to like their usage, but also becoming free agents. So if we don't choose to keep them, there's going to be spots for Miller to replace one of those guys. And this was his first year starting over for the Greyhounds. But after a few abysmal starts from like last season, much better improvements this year. Got to a respectable sub 3 goals against. Thing with him is he likes to use his size to help him stop the puck, but he's lacking on his lateral movements. And as you all know, for goalies, that's probably one of the biggest things. And unfortunately, his size can't help him big enough for that. But worst case, Blues never sign him to a contract. Best case, he's career AHL starter. But again, you never know about goalies. So when you're this late, might as well take a shot on one and at least have somebody that, you know, can be helping out your minor league teams moving forward and whatnot. But
For
yeah,
sure. You've seen like with the goalies that we've had recently, like even just the backups have been finding success as starters in other teams. So like there's always back positions to fill. So like you said, someone's gonna hop up and we're gonna need a goalie. So
yeah,
they said worst case scenario, we don't sign him. Best case scenario turns into something. You never know.
exactly. I mean, but
When in
that
doubt, give me depth. Yeah.
that does it though for our Blues only draft. As you can imagine, doing 9 picks is a lot easier than the hour plus long 30 pick full draft that we did. If you hadn't had a chance to check that out, feel free to as well. But yeah, we'll see what predictions come true tomorrow and
Probably
whatnot.
none of them, but here's to hope we
Probably.
get one. So,
No, we'll see what happens. I mean, you never know, especially because you can trade these picks. It
Right.
can get pretty crazy on day of, but yeah, I mean, that's at least who we see the Blues taking, as you saw, pretty European heavy as it has been the last few years. But we seem to
lots
be
of
having a lot of
defense.
success out there. So why, you know, fix something that's not broken, right?
Yeah,
Right.
I expect us to be a team that competes again next year too. We got too much young talent to be not even make the playoffs similar to last season. So I think that a couple of these guys will take the next step, and guys like Snuggard, who we talked about, are going to take the next step also. So it's good to backfill those positions in the minors also. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's
It'll
sort
be
end
exciting.
size. Like,
Yeah,
absolutely.
lots of defense, which we need.
Yeah.
Right, we need
Oh yeah.
someone to pair it with Pareka to really be a lockdown first line type defensive pairing. So hopefully one of these guys pans out.
We'll see. Time will tell. And real quickly before we sign off, just want to give a big thank you again to our prospect researcher, Bryce. Puts in a lot of time, follows these guys for months at a time, and constantly providing us with great coverage, as you saw here. So thank you again, Bryce, for all of your work that you do for us over here. Thank you, all of our viewers, for joining us for another fun episode of Birds on a Blue Note. We hope you enjoyed learning about some of these guys that may or may not be Blues next year. And we will see you all later. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Thanks, guys.